This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Brent crude prices rose in late-day short covering on Friday as investors worried about U.S. military action, as President Donald Trump presses the Islamic Republic to halt nuclear weapon development. Brent crude futures settled at $71.76 a barrel, up 10 cents, 0.14%. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude finished at $66.39 a barrel, down 4 cents, 0.06%. For most of Friday, Brent and WTI were down, with the market awaiting developments in the struggle between Iran and the U.S.
The United States is in active negotiation over the sale of Venezuelan oil to India to help India diversify its sources of crude oil, U.S. envoy Sergio Gore said on Friday. The U.S. has made diversification away from Russian crude a condition for cutting tariffs on goods imported from India, the world's third biggest oil importer and consumer. The Department of Energy is speaking to the Ministry of Energy here, and so we're hoping to have some news of that very soon, Gore told reporters on the sidelines of an event in New Delhi where India joined the US-led Pax Silica initiative aimed at building a silicon supply chain for high-tech products.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Russia's seaborne export of oil products is expected to fall 10% in February from the prior month as unplanned refinery outages and harsh weather conditions at key ports slow fuel loadings, data from market sources and LSEG showed. In January, exports of oil products from the Russian ports totaled 9.12 million metric tons, according to the data from industry sources and Reuters calculations. A series of drone attacks has disrupted operations at several Russian refineries, including Lukoil-owned Volgograd and Ukhta refineries, as well as privately owned Ilsky and Afipsky refineries, while damaging infrastructure at the Russian Black Sea port of Taman.
The Trump administration announced on Friday it will roll back clean air regulations limiting mercury and hazardous toxins from power plants, saying it will boost baseload energy, while public health groups warn it will harm America's most vulnerable. President Donald Trump's Environmental Protection Agency has said that easing the pollution standards would alleviate costs for utilities that run older coal plants at a time when demand for power is soaring amid the expansion of data centers used for artificial intelligence. Environmental groups have said that weakening standards for mercury, a neurotoxin that can impair babies' brain development, and other air toxics will lead to higher health-related costs. Next, we have the top news in metal market. Gold prices rose more than 1% on Friday, supported by weaker than expected U.S. GDP data, while investors digested President Donald Trump's announcement of fresh global tariffs following the U.S. Supreme Court's tariffs ruling. Spot gold was up 1.5% at $5,071.48 an ounce by 2:08 p.m., 19:08 GMT. U.S. gold futures for April delivery settled 1.7% higher at $5,080.90. It's hard to see the president collecting his toys and going home. He will try to re-establish tariffs using other statutes which will promote volatility, said Tai Wang, an independent metals trader.
Copper, aluminium and other base metals prices gained on Friday after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down sweeping tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump under a law meant for national emergencies. London Metal Exchange benchmark 3-month copper rose 0.8% to $12,917 a metric ton by 17:20 GMT, having touched $12,985.50 for its highest in a week, while aluminium advanced 1.2% to $3,103.50. U.S. tariffs on primary aluminium, copper products and steel were not affected by the ruling since Trump did not use the emergency law to justify them. He used Section 232 of the Trade Act on national security grounds for the metals duties.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Chicago soybean futures came under pressure on Friday after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, pausing a rally that had begun on February 4 when Trump said China would make additional purchases of U.S. soybeans. Analysts said China may be less likely to follow through on another big purchase of US soybeans that Trump has been touting for several weeks in the absence of tariffs as a stick. Corn was little changed in choppy trade, and wheat hit its highest point since June on a short covering rally.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.